So hi everyone and welcome to a new edition of You and My Boro. Bumper edition today, loads to go at, transfers, Sunderland defeat, where Boro are at in the league, all sorts to talk about in the company of Dom Shaw from the Northern Echo. Very quick bit of housekeeping before we start. If you are not subscribed to the YouTube channel, then please give us a subscribe, give us a like, drop us a message in the comments. We had some really good ones in the build-up to the transfer window. Hope you enjoyed the live vid that we did on deadline day. But do all that. That helps us massively. If you're listening on one of the podcast platforms, rate and review. And get yourself along to the Northern Echo website where you can read all of our Boro content. Special subscription offer starting the day. £5 for 5 months for full digital access and also a special all singing, all dancing app that means you can also read the paper. Right, Dom, in that paper this week, we have been talking about Boro and where the season goes from here, really. I mean, we won't pour over the minutiae of what happened on Monday night, but now that the dust settled, how damaging a defeat was that, and where does it leave Boro? We'll get to all the transfers and where things are at with that in a minute, but just in the grand scheme of things and the season as a whole, where are we at in the wake of Monday night, do you think?
I think it the grand scheme of things is it just adds to the frustrations that I've already built over the course of weeks and months.
Yeah.
Same old story, wasn't it? We were talking to someone yesterday about it, weren't we? Who'd watched it on TV, and they said, I thought Boro were great for half an hour. And we said, well, yeah, that's Boro. That's what Boro can be. But then what's also Boro is what we saw in the second half, the soft goals conceded. And I know there's clearly misfortune, an element of misfortune to the winner. Boro still contributed, didn't they, again, by giving the ball away so cheaply. Sunderland had offered very little before they scored the first goal. They were given a leg up. Again, slightly fortunate, the deflection off George Edmondson, but Boro still gave the ball away. The second goal, obviously the same. Isidore took it well, but Boro gave the ball away. It's just the same old story week in, week out, isn't it? And that adds to the frustration. The mood, I think that frustration, anger has built because we're hearing the same thing week in, week out from Michael Carrick and from opposition bosses, but nothing seems to change. Nothing seems to change. Boro, well, I don't even think they're inconsistent, because at the minute they're just losing. They've lost 3 of the last 4. They've only won 2 in 9. They're not even winning every other week. They're not inconsistent. At the minute they're consistently losing games. They're consistently slipping up. I think, and I'm sure we're going to get onto it, I think this is Michael Carrick's biggest challenge now of his time in charge so far.
Let's get on to the mistakes then, because you can make the point, and I accept this, that Middlesbrough took the ball off Sunderland for Middlesbrough's goals. So Middlesbrough are not the only team that made mistakes, don't get me wrong. But all 3 of Sunderland's goals came from them winning possession off Boro, fairly high up the pitch, breaking on them and scoring. And how many times have we now seen that this season? And that then feeds into narratives that I know supporters are grumbling about, playing out from the back, trying to be overcomplicated. Now, Michael Carrick is not going to get his teams to just lump the ball forward. He's not going to do that. We can talk about it till we're blue in the face. He's not going to do that. That said, though, when there is clearly an Achilles heel there, and when Boro are shipping the same goals over and over again, surely you've got to do something to address it.
And I think this really is the uncomfortable truth for Carrick, because we're 30 games into the season now, and Carrick keeps talking about kind of learning from mistakes and getting better. But the obvious question to that is, the obvious response to that is, well, if those issues haven't been addressed in 30 games, where's the evidence to suggest they're going to be solved in the last 16 games? What is there? What has there been in recent weeks to suggest that Boro are suddenly going to cut out these mistakes, are suddenly going to tighten up at the back? We've said this on countless occasions. Still don't think Carrick's got the attack-defence balance right. but they just keep giving sides a leg up. If you're an opposition manager, even if you're like Regis Labrie, Dan Neil said it after Monday's game. He said we knew we had to start well, but we didn't. And yet, if you're an opposition side, even if you don't start well, even if you go 1-0 down, you know there's every chance this Boro side are going to give you a leg up. As long as you just stay in the game and don't. And don't let it get up beyond your reach. For a fact there's every chance you're going to have a spell, you're going to have an opportunity. And I think if you're opposition, and if you put Boro on the back foot, if you get him against the ropes, you'd be so confident you can deliver the knockout blow pretty quickly and pretty easily.
Yeah, the soft centre that is clearly there in this Boro team is a major, major worry.
And how do you think? So if you're Carrick now, the window's gone now, got 16 games to go. How do you think Carrick solves those problems, or Carrick can solve those problems?
Yeah, well, that's the question, isn't it? Personnel, do you look at personnel? It's clearly more than just personnel. Having said that, I couldn't understand Edmondson playing ahead of Fry. I thought that was a strange decision and one that backfired. So I think Fry has to come back in the team. Him and Vandenberg feel like the best two options at centre-half. Luke Ayling at right-back is a massive worry now. He's not going to be playing against Enzo Lafay every week, who looks a real find for Sunderland. But the extent to which he was given the worry run around has to be a worry. But there's two areas where Boro haven't... they've had a really, really busy transfer window. But we're looking at the same centre-halves, and we're looking at Ayling and Dijksteel as the only two right-back options. Well, that's a worry for me. So what can he do? Well, he's got to find a way of, as you say, getting the balance better. And clearly this back four needs better support. Now, does he go to a back five? That's not very Carrick-like, but we were at Newcastle last night. Eddie Howe very rarely plays with a back five. Decided he was going to do it last night to stop Arsenal. Worked an absolute treat. Maybe for 2 or 3 games, that's something Carrick has to think about and just get an extra body in there. He hasn't got really a natural defensive midfielder that he can put in there as a shield until or unless Johnny Howson gets fit. But Aidan Morris feels like he's crucial to this Boro team now. So I don't see what you do there. I think the worry is it's a mindset thing. It's the mindset that has to change. But Boro have to find a way of being able to withstand periods when the opposition are on top of them. That's for me the biggest failing of this team, that for 10, 15, 20-minute periods when the opposition get on top, and in championship football, there is always going to be a spell where the opposition's on top of you. That's just the way of the championship, certainly away from home. Boro collapse. Boro can't dig in. They can't ride out that period and then get themselves back on top. By the time they've got themselves back on an even keel, they've conceded 2 or 3 goals and the game's over. That for me is a mentality thing. So how does Carrick work on that? Well, it's difficult because there's not a magic one, but I think he's got to do that. He's got to get leaders on the pitch. He's got to find ways, whether it be tactical or whether it just be banging heads together almost, of getting this Boro team to be able to pull themselves together and sort themselves out when it's going against them.
And a couple of things from what Carrick said to us after the game on Monday and his presser last week. On Monday, he said, I asked him whether he was concerned by the form. He said he's not concerned. That's got to be like a message you're trying. I'm calm. I'm not worried. He has to be concerned about 2 wins.
I think that's the persona of him, isn't it? I don't get too high. I don't get too low. Well, fine. But surely behind closed doors, I'm not saying if he's not concerned, then you're right, it's a worry. But he must be doing something about it. He must be saying, how do we resolve this?
And I think a couple of other things. Last week at his press conference, he was being asked. Michael Walker from The Athletic was there, and Michael was asking him about how he reflects on the season so far. Elements of promise, elements of positivity, but frustration. And Carrick agreed with that. And then he was talking about kind of what he wants his team to look like. And he said, we want to play winning football. Well, Boro aren't winning. They've won 2 in 9. So if that is the case, that tells you alone, you've you've got to change something. Carrick might want to play a certain way, but at the minute that isn't working. So good managers adjust and adapt, don't they? And find a way to at least arrest the slide on the short term. Not lose sight of your long-term vision, not lose sight of what team you want to build, how you want your team to look, how you want your team to build, how you want your team to play. But you need to win the next game. Carrick always tells us, doesn't he? We're focusing on the next game. You need to win the next game. You need to find a way to win that next game. And Carrick also says he doesn't pay any attention to the league table. Well, that might be the case, but the league table and the standings undoubtedly is what as well as performances, but it's what we look at, it's what the fans look at, and the league standings have an impact on the mood of the fans, don't they? The mood in the stands, the mood in the fan base, the mood around the town, and there's understandable disgruntlement at the minute. This squad should not be outside the top six. This squad should not be 14 points behind Sunderland, 17 points behind the top two, and the sight of seeing your rivals, your arch rivals, star striker hoisting the corner flag with a shirt on in the corner like that really, that's ultimate humiliation, isn't it? That's the sort of thing that should, in the old school, if this was Neil Warnock, he'd be saying, I'm sticking a picture of that on the dressing room wall. Now I know that doesn't happen anymore, but that sort of humiliation has to fuel them, doesn't it? It has to fuel them for the week.
Well, it should do, and I think you make a really good point there, that changing things in the short term, changing things to get a result, need not be an abandonment of your long-term principles. And that seems to be where things are clashing here, that Carrick is adamant he's not going to change what he stands for. He's not going to change the way his side plays. Well, like you say, okay, that's fine. That's your long-term goal. That's your overriding vision, whatever you want to call it, fine. But in the here and now, Boro need to win football matches, and they need to start winning them quickly. In terms of what he can change and what has changed, I mean, we've seen quite a big personnel change in the window. I mean, how, now that the transfer window's closed, and obviously, pretty manic last few days, Lat deal went through, Iheanacho is in, Ealing Jr. is in. He obviously played off the bench on Monday night. Gilbert went out on loan. Where do we see this squad now then? Has the transfer window improved, Boro? Your silence suggests it's not an easy
I don't know. I think Boro's business. So when you strip it back, Boro have signed Morgan Whittaker, who has been one of the best forwards in the Championship for the last 18 months. Kelechi Iheanacho, who has been a former £25 million striker. Samuel Ealing Jr., who scored in the Champions League a couple of weeks ago. They've kept Ben Doak. They've got Ryan Giles in, who Carrick was desperate to re-sign in the summer, and obviously again this month. They've signed Mark Travers, who I think is probably the best goalkeeper option they could have signed given the situation they found themselves in there. So from that sense, yes, Emmanuel Latte's gone. But if Boro failed to make the top six or failed to go up this season, it's not going to be because they've sold Lat in January, because this Boro side aren't going to be short of goals either. They've got Tommy Conway back. Their attack is absolutely packed with talent. The obvious question, the obvious doubt is, are they strong enough at the back? Is there enough there at the back? Are they relying? If Aidan Morris gets injured, then there's clearly a major issue there in midfield. Yeah. Carrick was adamant. When Matt Clark left last week, Carrick was adamant he had enough cover at centre half. He didn't need another centre half. If Fry and Vandenberg stay fit, then you're fine there. Fry, Vandenberg, and Edmondson are three good centre halves. I think in Fry and Vandenberg, you've got two excellent Championship centre halves. I agree with you. I was baffled by that decision on Monday to drop Fry. I think Fry's been playing well. I think Edmondson's been solid, but I think Fry's a better defender, a better centre half than Edmondson. And for what it's worth, I don't know whether this is worth anything, but he's Boro through and through, and you're at home at Sunderland in a big Championship game on a Monday night. Surely that's got to carry some weight. You said it, didn't you? You saw the way Chris Riggs celebrated at full time. Well, imagine what it had meant today, like we saw what it meant to Hayden Hackney when he scored the second goal. Right back's an obvious issue as well, because Ayling looks a shadow of the player he was in the second half of last season, doesn't he? If Dijksteel's fit, Dijksteel probably plays at the minute. Dijksteel was obviously wanted, but Boro couldn't sanction that exit without bringing someone in. Carrick's clearly felt that he's happy with his defensive options. He's happy with what he's got. The midfield was an area they tried to strengthen. Clearly, Glenn Kamara was a target, but as soon as Saudi interest emerges, well, that's that out the window, isn't it? I think only time will tell on the midfield and defence. If players stay fit, if the centre halves and Morris stay fit, then I think you might be all right.
Yeah.
Right back's a concern.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. I think, like you say, going forward, there are an awful lot of options there, and it might take Carrick a little bit of time to hit on the right formula. And you know, admittedly, as we've alluded to, he hasn't got an awful lot of time. But I think there's definitely the prospect, the likelihood there of Boro formulating an attack that is right up there with anything that's in the league. They've got the personnel to do that. Clearly, like you say, the worries at the other end of the pitch, and it's exacerbated by the fact that that's the area of the pitch where the problems have been so far this season.
But yes, I do think, I mean, you touched on it.
Go on.
I was going to say, you touched on it. I don't think the defensive issues are personnel. Like, clearly, like, you know, the Ayling on Monday night, for example, didn't play well. But over the course of the season, the issue hasn't been a personnel problem, has it? It's been a structural issue. It's been a tactical problem. It's been, you know, they've conceded late goals successive weekends. Is it a concentration problem? I think there's various other elements. I don't look and think Boro's defenders are not good enough for a championship promotion, hopeful. That's clearly what Carrick has to get the bottom of.
Yeah. So just a couple then on specifics on the players who came in late. Iheanacho, I mean, it's an interesting one. He's been a real player in the past. Now, clearly his career's wandered around a bit in the last few years, but got the potential to be an interesting signing, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. His interview was good. His interview with the club was good, where he was basically saying, like, this feels like home to me. England feels like home. He's been to Sevilla. He's like been a bit part figure, really. I think he's played 9 times, 5 starts in the Liga in the first half of the season. But English football, he says, feels like home. He knows what the Championship's all about. Obviously, having played for Leicester last season. He's 28, so it's not like he's 33, 34, 35 at the back end. This really has to get his... If this loan spell doesn't go to plan, then what does the summer hold for Iheanacho? I'm not saying if the loan spell does go to plan, he's going to have a permanent move to Boro, but he's at least going to put him... He might do, but if... he's at least going to put himself in the shop window, isn't he? Yeah. I think if you were bringing I think we talked about this last week or on Monday when we did the live vid. If you were bringing a lone striker in as your only striker in the second half of the season, that would clearly be a concern then. The fact that you've got Conway back now, I think, is a massive boost. Conway will start next week, you would think, wouldn't he, at Sheffield United? And I think Conway is the type of character, like, clearly, you know, I've only spoken to him a couple of times after a game. I think you're the same. So you don't know you don't know the footballers as people, do you? But he strikes me as the type of character who will relish the challenge of thinking, like, right, I'm going to show you that I'm the main man now. Latte, that's gone. This is my chance now to nail down that spot. And he scored. You know, his ratio in the first half of the season was better than Latte. Latte at one stage, it was the best defensive striker in the Championship. Keep him fit, and I don't think you'll have any issues there with Conway. And then Iheanacho is like an added bonus, really. The players behind, the options behind, the challenge for Carrick, the interesting challenge, and we'll get to Ben Doak and his injury in a minute. The interesting challenge is where they fit them all in, because I think Bergzorg is on the team sheet ahead of Azaz at the minute, isn't he? Bergzorg's playing far better than Azaz.
Azaz's form's a bit of a worry now, isn't it? We were raving about him a couple of months ago, and I did think he was nailed on Boro's number 10. Then he was playing really well. He hasn't had a good month. No,
he hasn't. And if everyone was fit now for the Sheffield United game next week, clearly they're not. But if everyone was fit, Doak could be on the right.
Yeah.
Bergzorg could be on the left, you would think. I think there'd be a case for playing Whittaker ahead of Azaz as number 10 at the minute.
Yeah.
And Illing Jr. can obviously, he's versatile. I mean, he's played off the left. He's a wing back as well. He came on and played on the right on Monday night. That was clearly another signing where at the start of the January transfer window, Illing Jr. wasn't an active Boro target, but similar to the Dork situation in the summer, it was a case of, we can't really turn down an opportunity to sign a player of this quality. So it's Boro should be a good watch in the second half of the season. We go back now, don't we? I know even if you talk about like the defensive issues there, we go back to the piece you wrote last week. It's very much over to you, Michael Carrick, isn't it?
Yeah. One last one on the transfer window. Hackney, Porto, kind of came from nowhere, but then they came back in. I mean, I guess firstly, what does it say about Boro's determination to hold on to that key asset in the way that they turn those bids down? But then Hackney beyond the summer, if Boro don't go up, feels difficult probably to keep him again, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? I mean, you can understand why Boro rejected £10 million for him, can't you? We cover a fair bit of Sunderland as well, obviously. And what are they talking about for Joe Bellingham?
25.
And I think you said this week, didn't you? Strip the name, strip the surname away from it. Hackney's worth as much as Bellingham is.
Yeah.
He's an England under-21 international. He's 22 and captain in his hometown club. I think he's having a good season in difficult circumstances, really, because clearly he's far better and far more comfortable when he's got Morris alongside him, and we've seen that, haven't we? And yet he had that spell.
He was the pick of the Boro team by a country mile on Monday night.
Yeah, but the fact that Porto bid, I think, is just evidence. I mean, we knew it. We'd heard the murmurs, hadn't we, over the course of the last 6-12 months. But it's just evidence, really, that kind of Europe's elite are watching and aware of him. And as you say, if Boro don't go up, then there's certainly going to be phone calls and more knocks at the door in the summer, isn't there?
So,
just one before we wrap up. Tommy Smith.
Oh yes.
That
shame for him, isn't it?
Yeah.
You never like to see, and again, don't profess. I've interviewed him a couple of times. Don't profess to really know him, but everything you hear about him is that he's a kind of model professional. Salt of the earth, real good kind of figure within the dressing room. Had some good games for Boro on the right hand side, to be fair to him. But obviously, what was it, October 2023 that he had the Achilles injury? So it's nearly 18 months. Has had to accept he's not going to be able to get back. I mean, Boro understandably weren't going to be offering him a new contract. That's just the harsh kind of realities of football. But for him to then make the decision, right, well, that's probably it. I mean, it can't be easy, can it?
No, 32-year-old. I'd seen that Boro is continuing his rehab at Boro.
Yes, with Boro at Rockcliffe,
yeah. But yeah, 32-year-old, and I always think, I tweeted this week, I always think, like, when you're a professional athlete, sports person like that, you want to go out on your own terms, really, don't you? You want to decide when it's time to wrap up. You don't want to be dictated to by an injury like that, especially when you're 32. And I guess, like, the most frustrating element for Smith, other than the fact, like, he can't do what you'd imagine he loves doing every day again, is the fact that maybe not the best spell of his career, but he was a major part in what was Carrick's probably best Boro spell, not probably, best Boro spell, best Boro team. For all, like, we think back and think about Ryan Giles bombing on down the left and how successful that was. Well, key to allowing that to happen was Smith being solid on the right side, tucking in and making it a back three when Giles bombed on forward. And he was a first choice right back at the start of last season. Had he not got that injury, he'd have played another 40, 50 games for Boro, wouldn't he? And at 32-year-old, you'd have probably thought he'd have been in the market or in line for probably a further year's contract or whatever this summer. Just a reminder, really, I think, of how cruel the game can be and how short the careers can be. Because suddenly you're 32 and all you've ever known has been taken away from you.
And when we were talking earlier about leadership, about Boro being able to dig in, about trying to ride out difficult spells, Tommy Smith, Darragh Lenihan. I mean, it's easy to say it in hindsight, but both of them at their peak have a lot of the attributes that this Boro team need.
Yeah. I think that was one of the key elements why Lenihan was identified and signed, wasn't it? As well as the fact that he's a really good defender. And Smith initially came in on a trial, didn't he, under Chris Wilder?
Yeah.
And really, this signing was a bit of an afterthought because at the time, Isaiah Jones was playing really well in that right wing back role, and Smith very much signed as cover. But again, I think one of the elements will have been, well, he's a really, really solid professional, and he's good around. You know, he'll bring all the experience and all the know-how and the leadership. And yeah, you've lost that. And how they'd have done with both those players, Howson staying fit this season, because that we saw it again on Monday night, didn't we? We're going back to where we start now, but we saw it again on Monday night. Game management, nous, experience, leadership, we're all lacking.
And so just to wrap up, you've had to redraw your holiday plans, haven't you? Because you were meant to be having a wonderful Friday night in the Potteries, Stoke away, Friday night, cheeky little stopover in a travel lodge or something, bit of brekkie the next morning. Not happening.
Is it my fourth? Is it my? I could easily do.
You are the Stoke correspondent.
I was just about to say I could easily sell myself as a freelance expert on Stoke City this season. It's Is it my fourth time? Have I seen, what is it? My fourth time and I've seen 3 different managers or something like that. I
was sorting out the rota the other day, and I don't know if I have told you, but you're definitely earmarked for the rearranged game, so don't you worry about that.
I know. Yeah, I saw them 3 times in a month against Sunderland, and they had a different manager every time.
Every time, yeah.
Every game was as formidable as the last one. Yeah, I mean, Sheffield United away next.
Oh yeah.
When you've lost 3 and 4,
we'll look ahead to that next week, but it's a biggie, isn't it?
Yeah, and when you've lost 3 and 4, 4 and 5 in all competitions, away to Chris Wilder's Sheffield United is probably not the game you'd pick.
I can't imagine Chris Wilder wanting to rub it in if things go to plan from a Sheffield United perspective. I can't imagine that.
And it takes you back, doesn't it? You know, what was Carrick's best game, best night as Boro boss? Well, I think you'd go something to beat that Sheffield United away game.
Yeah, probably a night, yeah.
We've said before, haven't we? Carrick has a handy knack of finding a result when he needs one. Hellfire he could do with one next Wednesday night at Bramall Lane.
Yeah. Well, we'll have a proper talk of that at the start of next week. So watch out for our socials. As I say, subscribe to the channel and then you'll get a notification. You won't miss our ramblings ahead of Bramall Lane. Hope you have a good weekend. No Boro action, obviously, but still plenty going on. Keep an eye on the website. Join us back on the YouTube channel or the podcast platforms. That's easy for me to say at the start of next week for some more You Are My Boro.